So I'm sure we have all used AI to some extent, even without knowing. Yeah, so for myself, as from an educator's perspective, I've tried to look at how the tools can help me to review learner guides, learning content, lesson plans, increase the validity and reliability of my tests, that it better is linked to my module outcomes. And I found that that has been quite a big helpful, almost to start building a some call it an agent, where I can have an AI lecturer assistant specifically based on my wants and needs and how I've been training it in layman terms. Yeah.
Well done. I look forward to your workshop when you run it.
Here we go.
Please send me the invitation. Is anybody else using AI in any form? I think Carmen, you mentioned recipes, and I used it in non-academic tools as well. So I'm not an artist. You'll tell when my slides start that I am not the one who made these slides. This is not my skill set. So I really rely on AI when it comes to drawing or getting graphics or designs to work for me. Anybody else use AI in any way?
Hi, Andrew. Long time no seen. So I do use it for various things. I encourage the students to use it sometimes for some of the things. I like to use, I don't remember now the name, it's open on my tab. Get articles, put them in and summarize. Give me 5 bullet points. And then I know, instead of me spending the time skimming through 20 pages, I want the first 3 bullet points. If it's interesting, then I'll carry on reading it. Otherwise, next one. Because I know what I'm looking for. So I'm saving myself time with an AI. I know that students use them to prepare their presentations, and then you see the problem once the presentation comes. I think they're using Monique AI for the presentations, but that becomes problematic because they don't tailor it to the particular topic the way they should.
And I think that's the big part about having subject matter experts in the room, because there's a heavy reliance on AI, and I'll try and demonstrate this part of the distrust about it as well. There's a great podcast that Trevor Noah did with, I've got his name, but I'll send it to you, Carmen, and maybe just a list of resources. And it speaks about the distrust of AI and the complexity of it all. And I think it's an important understanding tool as we move forward. Thank you. Anybody else?
I really believe the students need to be educated. They don't understand the limitations of AI. I had a discussion the other day. I gave the students an assessment and I said, open book, you can use any resources if you want, but please don't use ChatGPT. It doesn't have it will never access the latest guidelines, and you guys need to know the latest guidelines. No, ma'am, I paid for ChatGPT version 4 something. Not good enough. So yeah, they need to be educated.
Yes.
And obviously we need to be educated.
Yeah, I think it's maybe not even a dictator, but the authority figure. Being a subject matter expert is exactly that. I'll chat about it just now, and Khanyiso, I see your hand, but it's a probability tool, and that's how it uses its answers. More like choosing your answers based on popularity, if anything. So there are those aspects where they really need to be considered, and I'm glad we have dictators like you in the room. Khanyiso, I see your hand.
I just wanted to point out an interesting fact that actually almost every one of us has almost used AI before. Google in itself uses AI systems. So whenever you go on Google, when it's helping you search and it's completing your sentences, that is AI on its own. Also, there's Google Translator. I know in high school when I didn't understand some Afrikaans word, you type it in Google and say translate. And that in itself was AI. So it's just that I think people now have a fear based on the rapidness of growth that it has. But funny enough, as I'm saying that, almost every one of us has used it before, and maybe we just didn't even notice. So yeah, that's it. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Khanyiso. I want to unpack that a bit more, but I think I'll just try and get through the slides because I know as academics, we can really dive into this topic, and I just want to see if we can get some background going. So I'm using this, the uploaded to PowerPoint slides. I don't know if you can see my slides okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Again, I think this is where I'm exposed because I'm not the same designer who made these slides, and I'm just pretty basic, put in a background and put some points in. So I know this chat is about AI, but I only want to speak about GPT because I think I know that's what I have the most experience with. And I think it's also just the largest platform. Google's Gemini and Copilot, those would be great, especially Copilot because it's part of our Microsoft suite. And it would be good if we could have access to it and see how we could possibly make use of it. But I'll just speak about GPT because this was the real groundbreaking one. So what Khanyiso was speaking about earlier was that language model. When you start predicting text and you start typing and you have predictions based on information that was shared with the platform prior, and that was the first burst of it. Then we had the improved language model, and we had the chat interface. I think that was a big step because we were able to just pass on instructions and allow it to give us feedback based on those instructions, and then also to give us, I don't know if there's anybody who codes in the room. I think it's really been a game changer in that space, creating code, and it also affects the future of work. So I had a nice chat with my line manager, Mike Swanepoel, and there's lots of statistics based on one, automation, and two, AI, and how it will affect the future of work. So I look forward to our institution speaking about educating students in terms of possible job opportunities that would be in the market, but also job opportunities that may be falling away. An article I read recently, again, Carmen, I'll send it to you, it spoke about the role of radiologists in the States and the possible tools or possible ways that AI is affecting that job at the moment. And at the time, I think this was an automation information, and that was predicted maybe 20, 25 years. But with AI, it's pushed forward that date, about 5 years now in terms of how it could possibly affect the role of radiologists in the healthcare system. This is an American study. And I think it's just important for us as academics to know what's happening out there and how it relates to our students and possible opportunities. Then we had the big jump to DALL-E, GPT-4, and the code generator. DALL-E was the image generator, and I think we've seen a lot of weird AI videos, and that's a big part of that whole space. So we had AI images, and that was a big part of that boost from DALL-E, and I think this is 2023 going forward. We have the GPT store, so I have my paid version, like that student of GPT, and I'll just show you what it looks like if anybody hasn't seen it. And then we have GPT-4 Omni. This is the most recent one, May 2024. Has anybody had a conversation with GPT-4? I might be able to queue it up on my device. Anybody had a chat with it, like an audio chat? Verbal conversation?
But I've used to generate assessment questions quite successfully.
It's wonderful. I think there's a big opportunity here, and I think we can try and see how we could possibly use it. So quick one. Just a little bit about what GPT or what AI can and what it can't do. So again, we know, I think just from that example, it writes amazing messages. My colleagues are on to me. They know when it's me sending the reply and when I use AI to respond to it. My grammar is not that good. Develops program code. Again, that feeds into the EBIT faculty and what we're teaching and how it affects the job market. Analyzes data, manipulates files, yes. I think it's actually a big tool that we use for some of our queries. At this time of the year, we have the gradebook, and we often have to export from our Moodle site and then find our way back into ITS, and there's some nice guides around it, but there's always a conversation about XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. And I think at the time I hadn't taken time to look into those Microsoft Excel skills, but you can upload your spreadsheet into GPT and ask it, can you do a VLOOKUP based on these values? And it will manipulate the data for you. You can also just use it to get graphics for some of the data in your research. We had a workshop using some of the tools that exist, so Tableau, Google Studio, Google Looker, I think a few of those, and one of the other 2 tools. And a big part of it was how they would incorporate AI into those platforms anyway. So just finding different ways to use it and seeing how it works. And then again, the last point there, it speaks. Hopefully I'll have some time to share that with you. What it is not is a search engine. And I think it's a big point to tell your students, it is not good for searching facts. The disclaimer on any GPT point is put through as please check your facts, even though it's been sharing multiple facts and reasons around that. And I think just putting that forward, I think with a search engine, you get all the data, all the information, and you may get the more popular information at the front of the first page or the second page of your search in Google. But with AI, what they will look at is the responses that are more popular, and also look at the training from the, say, developers, the input generators. So they have to train it and make sure it gets the right information, and then it will decide what is the best option. Again, AI is the one deciding, not a person. And again, it does look at probability in this and gives us feedback. So it's not great as a search engine, and I think it's part of the education process we need to put forward. How does it work? So this is just some data that gathered, and I'll see if I can also just make sure these references are shared with you. They talk about trained texts, Wikipedia, and again, that's already a red flag. Wikipedia, digital books, common crawl data set, 400 billion words, and billions of parameters. And I think it's probably more on continuously going. And we end up with that text-based learning. So what Khanyiso spoke about earlier is that predictive text, and we've seen it prior whenever you go on Google and like, who is the actor with, and the next possible words will be, the eyebrows or the most money or the award-winning etc. And it works the same way in the space. So bear with me here, apologies. It would look at what the next possible word would be. And it would say, percentage-wise, we're looking at 40% that this is about a car, 20% is about a house, dog, etc. And this is part of the reason that if you ask GPT the same question twice, you may get different results. That's not ideal for a search engine, for any fact-checking space, because it's trying to find out what you would perceive as the best possible answer. And again, in GPT, you get information where you have to rate your response. Often like the end of your WhatsApp call, sometimes it says, how would you rate this call? It will do the same thing as you respond. How would you rate this response? And again, it's not a factual thing, but it is helpful in some ways. Okay. So it's trained with text. So again, we looked at the previous 2 slides ago, the amount of text it had to go through. And this is really impressive as is. It looks at the sequence of tokens, and these are just word parts, so not just necessarily words, but maybe concepts or ideas or words put together. And then that information is put through a reinforced learning process. So people would write responses to queries as training data. So a good example. Hi, how are you doing is the question, and what's the ideal response? And you'll say, fine, good, okay. And we would have ratings based on this response. And depending on how the trainers train it and say this is the best possible response in this particular context or this particular question, it will develop that. Now, I think we magnify that billions and times over because there's so much data out in the world. And then you have evaluation of those quality responses. So it will evaluate those quality responses and start creating information based on those responses. So now that it knows what a good or ideal or response would be to a particular question, it will start using that for other content to develop questions, to develop responses to answers. Okay, so I think the big issue, I think we had maybe GPT 3.5. Did you ever hear about AI being racist or anti-Semitic? Nobody had heard that didn't come up in a discussion somewhere?
No, haven't heard of it on my side.
It was a big issue, and it was discriminatory in a lot of spaces. I don't know if Google still does this, but if you type in beautiful woman in Google, it would, the last time I checked, it would be, this is where I should have said it put my wife, but I missed that opportunity. It put up, I think it was a blonde, skinny lady, and this is the ideal response in terms of beauty, and it will be the same space in terms of discriminatory, in terms of anything. So it will decide what it thinks would be this way. And because a lot of the data that it searched over the web was, I think it had an anti-Muslim rhetoric. So some responses would be against Muslims, general responses would be against Muslims, but that was because this is the data that it's found, the data that has been fed, and it's using those responses based on that data. So there's a huge discriminatory problem, and they had to go back and reevaluate this to make sure they're able to change this information. So again, this wasn't too long ago. This was probably last year that GPT had this issue. Now I think it's a little bit better, and it's just, again, the data that it's trained on and how it's trained is just issues of confidence here. Okay. So
Andrew, we've just got Daniel. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, shoot for
it. Just on that, I've been to a workshop earlier in the year. A speaker from EduFos, that private university, where it spoke about research, Africanization, and how these, call it Western database servers are fed and used and trained, but we in Africa use it and is very much reliant, dependent on whatever we type into Google or whatever we type into ChatGPT. And it just needs to cross your mind once to think, but this is maybe not the best first-hand information in my African or South African context. So you were mentioning about GPT being racist. That term never crossed my mind, but I could definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I can't say that it's really racist, but that was the catchy term at the time. It's just the data that was fed. You know, if you tell it a cat is a dog, it's going to say a cat is a dog. And if enough people say that, go through enough information, then that's what people get from it. So
the theme and the motivation behind the, call it, movement is that we in Africa need to build our own data service or information specific to our diverse cultures, languages, and realize that we shouldn't be as reliant on the West or European, but sorry, not too much about Asia, but that's just a thought to throw in there.
Absolutely. I fully agree. Just having our own servers and having control of our own data. I think that was one of the topics
Yeah.
of the eLearning Africa Conference 2023, is that you're asking Africans to trust data that is not collected by Africans in an African context. So it would have the American, or the European bias, because that's where the data is from.
Yeah.
Being in a Kenyan, I think South Africa as well. It's an unpopular belief, but there are wild animals roaming the streets of Africa, and if that's the data is set in South Africa, but unfortunately in KwaZulu-Natal, the hippo got to the streets, so that's just unfortunate. Was there another question there?
Just giggling.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to do a little separation between foundation models versus tools. I think it's important just to understand. I think in a lot of cases, we will have a space where we think we're using this new AI, but it's based on another foundational tool. So you'll see something that is maybe collecting or reading data for papers, and it has a different name, .ai, but the basis of it is still either GPT's OpenAI, so it'll come from that, or Gemini, Mixtral, Claude, Llama. There are a few others, but these are the main ones. So what we often get is spin-offs from these tools. We would have, and I'll show you the GPT store just now. I think I'm going to get there soon. You would have people creating GPTs, which is great, but for unique needs. So like we said earlier, it would be so nice to have our own data and old information. And Khan Academy is working on, I think it's actually released now, is a learning buddy. I think we spoke about tutors or assistants in this space, but having those tools based on maybe your module context or information you want your students to have is a reality, and it wouldn't be too pricey to do it. At the moment, GPT is probably 350 to 400 Rand a month, and to be able to train it on data that you'd like your students to use, and the concept here, we'll get to it a bit later, is to expose them to this space to ensure that they are using or they are aware of it, and not just blatantly claiming that I've got the most expensive one, I know it's right. You can have the most expensive AI if it's not trained for your specific needs, and more than that, if it's not trained by the subject matter expert, it's going to steer you in the wrong direction. So I'm glad we have lecturers in the room, and I think you're the forefront of this, and hopefully we can get some good traction going. So just a few categories in the AI space. We have text generators, so 3.5 GPT 3.5 to 4 Omni. We'll have Microsoft Copilot, and anything that's a space where you can generate text or ask for information. It will generate documents for you as well. Yes, I think you can. Yeah, you can definitely generate documents and PowerPoints and download them from these platforms. So you'll just request and then download them. If you'd like that as well. I think a big part for some of the researchers would be to also get graphics or graphs, charts, analysis information based on the data that you upload, and then get nice representative data. And hopefully we'll have a little workshop about that sometime soon, just how we can leverage some of these tools to support us. So I think, I forgot the name of the tool. Is it Atlas Atlas TI? I don't know if you still have workshops for Atlas TI. Anybody use Atlas TI? Okay, so okay, so
it's a yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Not anymore as
Not
well.
anymore. So a problem with Atlas TI is one. Sorry.
We say we don't use it anymore.
I heard from my colleagues that it's difficult because one, the learning curve is quite steep, but also you need to renew a license annually, and you might not always have enough time to do that. And you have students depending on this software and researchers depending on this software, and you might not be able to generate the information you need as quickly. So there's lots of other data out there. tools out there to support this kind of feature. Not exactly the same extent as Atlas TI, but there are some supportive tools in terms of generating graphics and analysis data for you. Image generators, we have DALL-E, which is part of the GPT suite. Midjourney, this is a big issue because, and maybe not in our particular context, but for graphic designers, and this also cuts into the market costs, is that I think I went to the mall the other day, and they have all these exercise books for the year and journals for the year, and all the graphics are AI generated, and you can tell, of course. But it's also a huge, cost saver, and I think it just impacts the economy a lot more. And the last one I'll put up here is the video generators. Now, this, I've used these. I think I've used Synesthesia a couple of times, and HeyGen. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos where you would have somebody speaking on your behalf, but you can tell, like, this is not, it's not a real person. Maybe it's a fake Tom Cruise or a fake Katie Holmes, and they're speaking, and they're just reading off a prompter. Have you seen those videos before?
Yes.
Those are actually really good if you think about the opportunity in an academic sense. So if you have maybe some content you want to prepare, and maybe some slides that you want your students to watch, and you use one of these tools to do that, it'll be able to, one, based on your script, because you're the subject matter expert, so you can speak confidently to the content. And then you can just use one of these tools to do that. And if you would like to go a step further, so if there was a department license, etc., you can also just use your own image to create these lecture slides for you. So like I'm speaking here at the corner of my screen, and there's a PowerPoint slide going. You will be able to put that in the script based on your visual features, and put that information through. So when it comes to an opportunity to save time but still maintain a quality of content, I think it's an interesting way to go. SAR is the last one. It should be released by OpenAI sometime soon, and this is the one that really cuts into video generation. So anybody who shoots videos on any real equipment can tell you it's a really expensive process. So to have an opportunity for an AI to generate a scene for you and use that for your learning and teaching purposes, and I want to share something with you that is contextual in this regard, that can really be a huge time saver in terms of how efficiently we can get work done. Okay, any questions before I proceed?
I have a question about the video generator, and my fear is that so everything that you put into chat becomes part of chat's pool that it's going to use in future. So what happens if you put yourself and your features, and then somebody else uses you in their video?
Oh, absolutely. That's a real problem. Outside of that as well, they are looking at regulation around this. Simon mentioned something about the intellectual property of on what's on these platforms, and GPT, especially because it's the forefront of it, has a clear browsing data or clear data option when you're on the platform. So again, this is the biggest house, so OpenAI, but other AI platforms may not have the same ethical considerations. It's very possible for you to be teaching at multiple universities at the same time, and somebody's just using your likeness. So it's a very real possibility.
I have a question for Daniel. Could you get that assistant of yours to mark your assignment?
I've tried it, but there's the speaker from EduForce was actually saying that since the early 2000s, he was part of his project, and it was part of his PhD, was to create a program and then train it on previously marked assignments from other colleagues. So they build a program. So very similar now, we can use AI, but one just needs to be careful understanding AI, that it can be a generative language model. So you can think like, wow, it gives me, a student gets 84%, but if I review it according to the rubric, you see, this is almost like made up generic content. Yeah, so ChatGPT doesn't work like that for that. Like you need to, but definitely. I was going to ask maybe for something for later, but just coming back to the, call it African context, South African context. Do you know of any language models that is already busy with the feature to translate into a local language from Afrikaans to Xhosa to Zulu, or and then is universities using that? Because I think that would be quite applicable, because many of our students are from different language groups, and the teaching medium is English. But just to hear something in your home language just triggers that area in the brain that just helps learning. I don't know if yourself, Andrew, or any of the colleagues have come across anything.
So two parts in terms of specifically for the African context. I think it will be wonderful. Fortunately for South Africa, there's a big language resource for Afrikaans. Secondly, Zulu. I'm not sure what the third one is, but this was in terms of just collecting data in order to have it on these platforms. So, for example, in Microsoft Teams, when it first launched, there was already an Afrikaans transcript option. So you'll be able to have subtitles in Afrikaans for an English lecture. And we're trying to run a project through the university. We did not succeed, where we try and get the recorded content in different languages and supported by translators. At the forefront now, we have this, it's not, again, the African context, it's DeepL. And I used GPT for subtitles for Xhosa. My wife is Xhosa, so I'm already behind. So I need all the help I can get to make sure I speak her mother tongue. But it does it decently, because with language translation, you always need somebody to be there for context. It's not just the live translation. So as far as I know, it's only DeepL. That's one of the platforms that's looking at this. And Afrikaans, Zulu are the forefront in South Africa. And there's really a large resource for Afrikaans especially. It's actually quite astounding. Khanyiso, I see your hand. Oh, Khanyiso, if you're speaking, we can hear you. No, yes, we can.
No, sorry about that. I know Google has recently added isiXhosa into Google Translator, but as Andrew would say, I'm not sure how 100% good is it. I've just seen that it has been added. I haven't tested it out. But as you would notice, I'm sure when you are translating some things to isiZulu or into Afrikaans, sometimes it's not 100%. As Andrew also has alluded that, language also works on context. So maybe you might add a word, but because of there's not enough context, it might interpret it in another way. But there has been a bit of progress, I think. We can just say it is a bit of progress since they've added another language. So I think there's South African languages that are there. I think it's 3 now, which is Afrikaans, isiZulu, and isiXhosa. Thank you.
Yeah, context is important, but also educators would have to put forward the right words, because some concepts are they just don't exist in other languages. And that's the fear, that we don't know what this word is. And I see it here. And we had a project from the applied accounting where they would be, like you just said, if I see something in my language, I understand it better. And it would be an accounting question, but it would say something like, sorry, the most random word that comes to mind is a Zambroni. That's the machine to clean ice. And that would trip up the student because as they're supposed to be focusing on the contextual question, they're like, what is a Zamboni? Is it a multiple? Is it a singular thing? And now we have a context issue. So we tried to automate that process where they would get questions. The students would maybe scan something or put a question to the lecturer and say, what does this mean? Or what is that? And then you'd have to put it through in a context that they would understand. So that's a big push now, and hopefully we can get some support for that. Okay. Just a quick one. I just wanted to show you the extent of AI videos. This is, I think, one of their flagship videos. And I don't know why it's not playing all of a sudden. Sorry, just 1 second. There we go. I hope it's playing now. Colleague, are you with me? Is it playing?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
wonderful.
yes.
Yeah, so again, this is fully AI generated, and this is from March this year. So it continues to grow, and the context is much larger. And the idea here is how we can cut costs, but also deliver a quality product to our students. So if you're in a space where you'd have to, for whatever reason, generate a video to help explain context or create a scenario around that, then having this option would be a very, very useful context. I don't want to get too far off track. What was I doing? I want to show you what GPT looks like. Maybe just for the hands of the room. Has anybody, have you all seen this? I'm sorry, I'm going to minimize my screen just now. With this view, I lose contact. You know what? I'm going to join you on a secondary device so I can still see you. Just one moment. Anybody paying for GPT in the room?
Yes.
Oh, okay, wonderful. All right, so you're familiar with this page. Let's see. I hope my connectivity holds. Add this device. Okay, I can see you now.
In a way, I feel that we are way behind our students when it comes to these tools.
Not me.
Most of the things the same, but I have my doubts. My son had a presentation to do the other day at school. He's 9 years old. So I sent him to do his presentation. In 10 minutes, he was ready. I go next to him, I look at the PPT. This is all AI generated. Yes, Mom, but it's real. It's true. 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So then I okay, look for references. Totally come up with.
That's very true, but I think Generation Alpha thinks very differently to Gen Z boomers completely. Even just the thought process. I think the one example I saw is that an intern was asked to bring 50 sheets of paper from the printer to the manager, and she went to the printer and printed 50 plain sheets, so she doesn't have to sit and count them. Because the manager said, why is this paper warm? It's like, oh, I printed them, and so I didn't have to count them. And it's just a fast way of thinking.
I can't remember that.
It's just a different way of that they think. And I think it's also just nice to see the line in generations and how they work. So just a quick preview of the platform. This is GPT. Then you have the option to change the versions of GPT that you're using. The settings, I'm going to go through here. I think we spoke about the privacy. So a few things in GPT, depending on how you want to use it. I use it quite a bit in my day-to-day tasks. So I also have the personalization of what I wanted to remember. And this is the option here that we spoke about, clearing ChatGPT's memory of you. But it's also important to think about the context in which you're using this platform, because if I know I'm a learning technologist in an African institution, In South Africa, I have these many people I respond to. You can also remember the information of your colleagues. So this person is my colleague, that person is my colleague. And then on top of that, you can link it to your OneDrive etc. But it's also helpful in terms of the kind of information that it would perceive that I would like to know about. And iffy so far, but it's very helpful in terms of letting it know what you would like from it and be very explicit in terms of that instruction so that you can send it out later on to get whatever information that you need that might be pertinent to you. There is a, let's see. Here we go. There is a GPT store as well. So depending on your particular needs, you can always look through the platform and say, I need some help with writing. Are the GPTs based on writing specifically? Research analysis. And again, this might be contextual because it would know the kind of the person that I may have. So it might queue up the most important ones. Education. So it looks at some of the tools that are already here and how we can possibly use those going forward. And I think I speak under correction, but I think this is the paid version options. And then the other side of it as well is to create your own GPTs. I haven't created mine yet, so I'm looking forward to that experience. And the idea here is for you to be able to create your own assistant in maybe this case. And I'll see the first draft. So the first draft they have here. Like make a creative who helps visuals for new products, or make software engineer who helps format my code. So again, you'll just ask it what you would like it to make. And then the big part here, which is important for institutions, is that you'll be able to feed it the information that you would like it to have. So if you're looking at a particular topic in your classroom and you know your students are going to use that tool as well, another avenue that, again, from workshops or from experiences or from water cooler talk, is to allow your students to engage with the AI tool. Again, this can be problematic because as far as I know, we don't have a set AI policy. I speak under correction if somebody knows more. I know we have a generative AI statement, but I don't know if our institution has a fast and set rule about the use of AI. But in this case, you'll be able to train it on the different needs. And again, this would be an extension of you in the classroom, or maybe a tutor for your students. And I think it's a challenging concept. I look forward to hearing about the development of any tutors or AI tutors in this space. But the concept is there. It's been tested in other institutions. I think it's Aga Khan Academy. They've got an AI tutor called Khanyiso. I don't think it's for higher education at the moment, but the concept is there to allow students to develop using that tool. And it's just one of the different ways to look at it. Just really quickly, I did this test earlier today, and we were speaking about the insecurity with AI. And I don't know if we've ever asked AI to let us know how many R's in the word strawberry. I did this earlier today. It still had a problem. So for some reason, this seems to be a challenge, and you can teach it. So if there's ever a use case example where you want to showcase the trust issues that AI brings forward, let's see if it worked today. How many R's in the word strawberry? Let's see. Okay, can you see my response on the screen? Okay, so this is, it's a simple example, but it's also just to illustrate that it is problematic when you use AI and you have such a high trust. And it says can make mistakes, and this is a big confidence. But the nice thing about this kind of information, and this is the learning aspect, is that you can train it to understand what's going on. It can be a bit of a lengthy process. So we did it as how many R's in the word straw? Okay. It's actually smarter than last time, because last time it said there was only one. Aha, there's one R in the word berry. What is the fourth letter?
I'm using it for Humanities.
So I'm trying to teach it.
I think you need an assistant to teach. At your pay grade, you don't have time for it.
Yes.
Let's see if we'll pick this up.
Like teaching a child.
Yeah.
It's exactly like that. It's exactly like teaching a child, and we need to treat it as just a very eloquent child, unfortunately. But it is teaching a child. Let's see if this will work. There we go. Okay. So,
but the
this
question is, if you knew the answer already, why you wasting your time to go through this lengthy process? So the problem is that students will not identify the error. Yeah.
And I think it's an important concept to share with the students. This has been happening, I think, since July. But this is the one word that came up in the popular discussion forum. And this is just an example word, and it's also such a strange error to have. People spoke about the way it sees words. It doesn't read words, it just sees an entire word and takes from that. But that being the case, using this for such high-stake information is problematic. So the students, like you said, will not pick up the error, and the confidence levels of ChatGPT are always through the roof. It's not going to question itself or anything. So this is just a popular issue. But I'm just checking my notes just to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. Are there any questions? Shoot.
Would it make a difference if you change what you include in your question to ChatGPT? Because what I find sometimes is if you tell it act as lecturer or rephrase, then it works a bit differently, but you need to have knowledge of what you expect the answers to be. So would that make a difference?
I believe it absolutely will. I think that's a big part about being the expert in a subject. You will know when it's giving trash responses or rubbish answers because you've experienced that. But more to that, you can also look at building your own resource or your resource hub with any information that you think is pertinent. And if your students are going to use AI, rather they use your GPT or your AI tool than scouring the web blindly for this content. So something that I think we're going to chat about scenarios in this space as well. Let's see. Is that I was teaching a course and I needed forum responses. And they're adult learners, so I didn't expect this much cheating. But I believe it was also just a space of being busy. How naive of me. So I had maybe about 20 students, so it wasn't too much to mark, but I could see maybe about 5 of them were using AI. So their responses were probably 95% similar, and it was a contextual question. So something that a lot of lecturers do in these spaces is that they also ask AI the same question, and they have it available. So they know when the student produces content, and Simon, Khanyiso, they've worked on Turnitin quite a bit, so they would have some context on this as well. But it's important to know what the response from AI will be in your teaching scenario so that you can preempt these kind of challenges. So they would have, in some cases, let the students use maybe designated AI tools, and they know the responses from Claude, from Gemini, from other tools as well. And you'd have it as part of the question and allow either the students not to use that content or have the students critique that response from the AI platform. So there are just a lot of avenues to address in this space. And I think they spoke about that common saying, a popular saying, that AI is not going to take anyone's job, but it would take the job of the person who, well, the person would lose out the job if the person does not know how to use AI. So just having AI as a tool, as a resource on your side, because it's not that big a jump. Again, it's a problem because the rate at which AIs are popping up is too fast. And the reason why they won't stop popping up too fast is because there's a lot of money behind AI. And there are ethical considerations, and ideally you'd want them to stop and say, okay, we need to look at the ethics around this. But the second any AI institution stops, another institution is trying to get ahead of them in this regard. So they will always keep trying to move faster than possible. I'll send you that podcast. It's really wonderful. It's Trevor Noah and another Noah as well, as part of the notes. It's a good listen. And ironically, he's not an AI guru. He's a historian. So he looks at the progress of different revolutionary developments globally and how they have worked, and AI is just one of them as well. Are there any questions before I go into my slides one more time? I'm aware of time. So Khanyiso and Simon, I'll let you chime in just now. Okay, I'm just queuing up my slides. So next is just some ideas around the space. And unfortunately, I haven't been at the health sciences faculty in terms of queries. Again, Nangamso is the one who engages with us in that regard. But I would love to hear from you in terms of AI tools for teaching and use case scenarios for teaching. We'll try and have frequent workshops. My slides keep jumping. There we go. Come on, work with me. Okay. So it would be nice to have context from lecturers, how they could possibly look at avenues. And Carmen, maybe we can chat a bit more, and I'll bring more of my colleagues into the room and see what possibilities are out there. Of course, Khanyiso and Simon, they will definitely share their information on the platform. Okay. So let's see. So there's a huge list of AI tools, and it looks at the possible scenarios in which you would use them. So not just GPT, but maybe GPT in the context of a researcher. Word processing or explaining a paper. I think it was mentioned earlier in the session. Can you explain this paper to me? And then you can see the points that are relevant. Finding or sourcing research papers based on a relevant topic, or finding out where, how many times or how many spaces a particular research paper has been processed. And then we spoke about translation, DeepL. I'm not sure what the foundation model is around that, but I'll look into it. In the context of teaching, these are some of the global, some of the workshop feedback that I've had. And it would be, of course, up to you as lecturers, but this is some of the thoughts that they had around this space. So the focus on learning and less on testing or grading is the one that keeps popping up as how we can possibly use AI tools in this space. We spoke about the flipped instruction model, or I think I'm a big fan of the Moodle lesson tool. But to promote active learning in classrooms, using some of these AI tools could be advantageous. Having more alternative forms of engagement. So I think in more, what's politically correct way to say this? Institutions with better funding have tools for lecturers to use inside these sessions. So I think I engaged with a lecturer at the medical school, and the challenge was she sits with 200, 400 students. And if you ask any one of those students a question in the classroom, one of them might literally break into tears, anxiety. Again, different generation, similar challenges. But having access to like a quick form that gives immediate feedback to the entire session, to the entire room, all these tools help in terms of building that student confidence. I remember the example I want to show you. And then I think a big part of it as well is having more oral related assessments or proctored assessments. So you can still have your assessment running on Moodle, but if you have it in a lab and the lab is IP address locked, so you can select a venue on campus and say, this would be an IP address lock. You can check to ICT and say, can we lock this venue so that only students in this venue can write this assessment? They'll say well and good. And you can leverage the AI platforms to help you get your content across. So something I've done recently is sometimes I'd like to have maybe 50 questions uploaded into Moodle. So anybody use the Moodle for quizzes? Okay, great. Does anybody use Respondus?
Not anymore, because we need to pay for it.
Sorry?
We used to during COVID, but now apparently each department needs to pay separately. So I wanted Respondus the other day, and I was told no, then the department needs to pay a license for it.
What?
So, yeah.
That is shocking.
Yes.
I did not know that. Sorry, that's terrible.
So I need to sit there and upload one by one by one.
Oh, that's actually one I want to chat about. So if you do have questions, and Moodle has a gift upload technique, and it's basically elementary coding on the platform side. But what you would do is, I think I'm done with my slides, one or two slides, so that you can just instruct GPT or the AI platform to change your questions into GIF format or an icon format so that they can be uploaded into Moodle. And I think that's a nice tool about those platforms, that they can just, okay, I know what the icon format is, and I see your list of questions. They're multiple choice or true false. I'll convert them into this platform for you. I'll try and quickly demonstrate, and then we can upload them into Moodle for you. So a process that takes, an hour can now take minutes. But again, it's always important for you to check. So if you're doing a bulk upload, I usually maybe do 20 at a time, and just to make sure that they're all okay, and then I can just review them as I go through it. In the health sciences context, are any of these tools useful? So if I speak about all assessment or proctored assignment assessments in classes, is that a useful tool? Are we, again, restricted by policy? Is it something that you'd want to try out?
We already do oral assessments.
Sorry, the mic's picking up everyone's voice at the same time.
I'm saying it's the norm to do oral assessments.
Ah, wonderful. Okay. And do we ever use the flipped instruction model, or do we ever use the Moodle lesson tool in the classrooms?
Moodle lesson tool.
Ah, wonderful.
Sometimes.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's great news. I don't think we have enough traction for that tool, and I think it's very useful. And I would love for us to put more of that content through. So this is the Bloom's taxonomy, and the idea was how we can leverage AI in this regard, and if it's usable, if it's not usable, depending on the content that we want to create. And I'll do the two demos. One is for the gift upload. Again, AI, the great time saver. That's what we want. And I'll do the short video, H5P. Okay. Depending on the degree of difficulty or the degree of assessment we want to put forward, we can use different tools in this way. I mentioned earlier, just giving the students the opportunity to critique the AI responses. And it's always best if you already have generated those AI responses prior, or you can do it together in a classroom. That would be fantastic for them to also just understand the inefficiencies of AI. Again, second part there, having those practice in class situations without AI or not self-study, just having them in the session, going through the content prior. And that's why the lesson activity is great in that regard, because you make sure they go through the content prior and have more formative assessments and less summative assessments, especially in the spaces where they can get the AI integration going. We do have a lot of lecturers who are pushing for more written examinations, handwritten examinations, which is great. I fear at my stage, I'm not able to write as fast as I type now, but having that option inside a lab where you're able to restrict access to different features and settings and allow them to type up or use the AI platform or use the content without the AI platform is very helpful in this regard. And then having them put out their own feedback information based on the content in some cases has proved helpful to a lot of students. So I think I just wanted to share two scenarios before I hand over. Let's see. So I don't have this content handy because I didn't expect it, but if we're looking at quickly uploading content into Moodle in terms of questions and question banks, this can be very helpful. Let's see, active learning. I find it easier to talk to AI like a person. Sometimes I say please, so when the Great Revolution happens, I'll be okay. They'll remember me. Okay. Okay, so this is a gift format. It's just one of the tools that you can use to upload questions quickly into Moodle. So initially you'd have to do the editing of the questions by hand. So if you can see here, the question format has changed quite a bit as opposed to the true and false questions that we have here. Now we would just copy the code. I'll put this into a plain text document. I'm going to save it in my file. Let's see. Please bear with me. I know it's a boring process. And quickly hop into Moodle. And again, this is, I think, a big part of the task of responders. So Ashwanis is great. I'm a big fan. And this is maybe an alternative in terms of how we can use some of the tools from AI. And again, I did not check the true-false questions. So that's a shortcoming on my side. You always need to check your questions with AI. I've been burnt before, but fortunately it was on Moodle and I could quickly make some changes. So I'll go to my question bank and I'll look for the option to import. And I'll select gift format. Don't know if I have a decent category. I'll just go to the top one. Did I find a decent category? I'll go to Themba. And I'll just need to choose that file that I created. I really hope it doesn't embarrass me today. Okay. Now we have those 5 questions in Moodle. So we can just preview them. And they seem to be okay. So again, if you already do have your question bank on a Word document or you're using questions from a document elsewhere, these are just one of the easier ways to leverage AI to quickly do the heavy lifting for you, and then you can move forward into other avenues. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll definitely maybe share this as a demo going forward. Yeah, I hope it's a time saver. Any other questions? I don't. Sorry, is there another question?
No, we seem to be good. We see how we can use it. Discuss how we can use it.
The context will always come from the lecturers because you're the boots on the ground. We're here to support. If we can find something that meets your needs, we'll definitely support you in that way. But you're in the forefront. Yeah, so anything that we can do support would be great. Simon, Khanyiso, I don't know if you want to add, because I don't want to take up all the time. I should stop saying both of your names at once. I know you're having that chat, like, who wants to go first?
Yeah. I think you need a reminder to unmute.
Okay. So maybe unmute.
You say you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. For some reason, it's like your microphone is not being picked up.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think I was charging my phone and maybe the laptop thought it was a mic. Okay, I was saying that I think AI is just like any other resource. It just depends on the individual how you want to use the resource, whether you want to use it in a good way or maybe if you want to misuse it. And I think that's what maybe we need to communicate to our students. But besides that, I think, Andrew, you said a mouthful. There is maybe one interesting thing that I can share. There's a part of Google, an AI-generated software called NoteLM. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. So what it does is that you basically, let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. And just tell me once you're able to see my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So what it does, so since I've been also going back to studying, what it does is that you can use this AI tool, and then you add your notes, whatever notes that you have. So you upload your notes here on this platform. So for example, there's an AI workshop that you did the other day, me and Simon. So maybe you can just copy. I can take this. This was just a report that I generated for that workshop. You then paste your information, your text, insert, and you click on generate. So it might take a bit of time. So I also did it a bit earlier. And then what it does is that all the information that you've put on, it creates a sort of a podcast. And instead of maybe reading the information again, you get to hear all the information that you were typing from the laptop. Can you hear the audio?
No.
No.
Okay, let me see. Maybe I didn't share it correctly. But what it then does is that it creates a podcast where all the information that you put into the system, it says it back to you. So you end up, you hear all your notes again. So for example, since I studied, I just want to hear everything that I studied again. You put it on Notes LM, and you can just hear every single thing that you had on your notes. Let me see if I can share this again one more time. Just give me a minute. I'll also share tab audio. Okay, so about this, I mean, maybe try to log also with my cell phone just so that you can hear the audio. At this device.
Right? AI in the humanities, and apparently it was packed.
Oh yeah.
Even the really stand out about it.
It was pretty impressive. Standing room only. The thing that got me, I think, was this like tension, between this, hey, AI, this is cool, let's see where it goes, but also this underlying current of
okay, forgive me about the sound being
professors,
tacky.
the lecturers, the ones who are like in it every day with the students.
Because they're the ones seeing this firsthand. And speaking of firsthand, you mentioned
Can you
something
hear the
in your
audio?
email about students, even after using these AI tools, kind of blanking when it comes to actually like talking about the material in class.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's like, it's one thing to have AI spit out a perfect essay about, say, causes of World War I. But if a student can't then hold a conversation about it, if they can't analyze those causes, debate them.
Right. It's like, where's the depth?
Exactly. Are they actually learning?
Yeah.
Or are they just, becoming really good at using a very sophisticated tool?
Yeah, so this is a report that I was writing after the workshop, and I just posted it here, and it's just reciting everything that was listed in that report. So it's also an interesting thing that I started looking into, and it helps with memorizing your notes. If maybe just reading is not enough, you can just put all the notes that you've written down, put it on the podcast, and you are able to hear everything that you have written. So yeah, besides that, that's it. I think I'll just leave it there. I don't know if Simon, you also want to share something?
Yeah, I can just share I think two things specifically. So the one thing I'll share is from the in-person workshop we also hosted with Dr. Jacobs's PR students. And this was the result of Dr. Jacobs having to deal with the fact that many students find themselves in disciplinary hearings because of their use of AI-generated text in their essays, and seemingly them being unaware that A, this is wrong, and B, it is detectable. And just from that experience, the other two speakers went into the ethics of AI and the matters arising from that, and beneficial ways of using it. And what I touched on was specifically how Turnitin, and I don't know how much, how many essay assignments and written assignments you may have to deal with, but Turnitin is capable of detecting AI-generated text. Now, this is something that, as a lecturer or someone marking the assignment, you can see what percentage it deems to be AI-generated. Now, this is somewhat it isn't 100% accurate. And by that, I mean it's not always 100% accurate either way, in that it can sometimes miss AI-generated text. For instance, you can quite easily hide it. You can quite easily hide it between your own written text. So in that way, it might glance over it, whilst it will then detect the other text as being AI-generated. And this was something that surprised the students, because as far as they were aware, they were conning everyone and getting away with it, only to find out that actually that's not the case. So I think in terms of dealing with this, an important thing is to make sure that students are aware that if they use AI, it will come up. It will come up on Turnitin. They will be caught out in that respect. And then it just comes down to a matter of, and I don't think there's yet an institutional agreement on what degree, what percentage is acceptable. But then it comes to simply, okay, how much of this is generated? How little are they actually engaging the academic faculties, their abilities of reason and logic, and being able to comprehend the subject matter themselves. And so that's, I think, a very important topic to be able to be aware of. And it's less about all the fancy ins and outs of AI, and that's just simply, do the students understand that the software is useful, but it's detectable, and they can't just slack off and forget to engage their critical faculties. And then I'm just going to quickly share in the chat an article which I think is quite useful, just because it deals with the myths around AI. There's a lot of talk around AI as if it's this sort of sentient entity, where the reality is there are a lot of myths around how we imagine it that affects how we engage with it. And I think an important thing in university is to engage with it in such a way that the students understand that it is simply a tool. It's not this cure-all, and it will adjust how they perceive it, and can perceive it in a more reasonable way that maybe it makes it easier for everyone to deal with. So just add the chat. I think those are my thoughts on the matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Khanyiso. I think, Simon, Khanyiso, we can look at creating a document to share to Carmen. And Carmen, you can share the document, because there's a lot of resources I think we've touched on today. And then, will that be okay, Carmen?
Yes, thank you. We'd appreciate that.
Sorry, Carmen, that's all from me. I was actually hoping, I know you mentioned there'll be a discussion going forward, and I know I've taken up a lot of time. But if there are any discussion points, Simon, Khanyiso, and I would definitely love to hear, because I think we learn the most from the lectures, and just finding contextual support is important for us.
Yeah. I think at this stage, I'd like to say that there was a bit of engagement as you were going through your presentation, but I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's such a lot of possibilities and opportunities, and with the resources, I'm sure we will engage more. We'll have to engage more.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of time left, so people might have. Sorry, I came in late, so I have not been part of the conversations that were there. But colleagues on that side, my name is Annelien Keert. So Carmen and I work together in the Learning and Teaching Directorate. So I maybe just first want to find out whether people have any further questions or engagements or comments on the discussion that we had.
I can maybe just mention that we now use it in research. The students often have to translate their questionnaires in isiXhosa, and now we put it in with the translate, and then we give it to the translator. Then it's much quicker for the translator to go through it, and it costs then less for the student, because then they can just correct it. And what we've also done with last year and now, we then put it in and then translate it back, because then the students can see it themselves. And the translation this year is already much better than last year, because last year it was really nonsense. But now it's much better, a translation. So it's one way that maybe you can start using it, is if you have to give translated documents, it costs less because it's much quicker for the people to go through it. Because it's expensive. So that's one way that we use it that would definitely help.
That's a very user-friendly and manageable way.
No.
Very awesome point. Can I, so I think with us being here, we did the second AI discussion of the year. Going forward, hearing that AI has been quite globalized, more from November 2022, we are at the end of 2024. Students have been doing case studies since Egypt times, and assignments. I think we still have that, and we discussed it quickly. We need to engage with the students, teach them how to, for example, do research, how to not how to write in a way, how to write academically, but now to help them become professional learners, lifelong learners, because it's quick for a school kid just to think, this is the objective. I can quickly get my PowerPoint done. But what learning takes place, and then the loss of opportunity, I think that's maybe where the focus needs to be done quicker sooner than later, because we are getting the new cohort of students coming soon. And yeah.
To add to that, I think would be useful if we have at the beginning of the year somebody like Andrew to come and speak with our students in each department, because then it will be a consistent message in all the departments, and we do it with the first year, second years, third years, fourth years, and repeat it every year till the message goes through. I know that in our department, Dr. Fogarty does it with the students, but I think it's not a formal thing. She's talking from like her own experience, but would be better to come from somebody like Andrew.
And then also for the educators, the training is quite important in terms of I might have good intent to think, but okay, I want to set up a great exam paper for this coming November. And I've got prior test papers, prior exam papers. Let me upload it to ChatGPT, and then let the AI use that information as a bit of a framework background. I give it some guidelines, and I'm getting this awesome. And I use words like November 2024 diagnostics exam. Then few people think of it that, well, the student can now literally go and give me questions on whatever your module is, 2024 November exam or previous. So thinking, yeah, we want students to learn from previous, but that's just what's the word? Something that educators need to be aware of. Not for, so data privacy, the whole exam scripts, control, all of those kind of things. And I think it needs to be taught.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a matter of educating students as well as academics with regards to what are the parameters, because you don't want to discourage the use of it. So we can be able to look at the benefits of using it, but then also to identify the pitfalls of using it and how does it interfere in terms of the level of learning that is required of them. Because when they go out in the field, especially in health sciences, there are a lot of things that AI is not going to get them to be competent on. So that they don't see us as policing them or restricting them. So those conversations.
I don't think we'll be able to stop them.
No,
rather
because
teach them how to use it properly.
But if I can just add to that, I think we also need more than an institutional statement. We need an actual policy, because I've had that exact situation with the student, because all the tests we do are on Moodle in the lab. But the students are so used to using Grammarly and spell checks. So now there's nothing you can do about the spell checks that are inbuilt into in the suite. So that's fine. But Grammarly for me is now taking it to the next level. And then you have to remind them, but you're not allowed to. And then they don't understand why, because it's a tool of their daily life. But it's a little bit too generative for me. So, and we do need clarity on that. And they themselves need to know what is acceptable use during assessment.
Yes.
And then it needs to then go into our
policies,
assessment, also, procedure documents and whatever. So that's quite a thing. And the other thing I want to say, also touching on your point, so I also learned about using ChatGPT from the students, because I asked the students. So we had a reflective exercise, which then completely missed the whole point of it, because instead of writing a reflection, they were all putting it into chat, and they all had the same reflection, which now they haven't learned the skill. And so then we decided to ask them, okay, how do you use generative AI? And I was astounded by the number of students who said, it helps me to study, because I ask it to create MCQs, I ask it to create case studies, I put my PowerPoints in from your lectures, and then it gives me questions, and that's how I practice for your test. So I thought, okay, I need to try that, but also then I realized I can't try it on my own material, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to then, my stuff will be in the pool. Yeah. So it's quite a thing to think about.
That's maybe something we can consider. I found a bit before. That's why I asked Andrew and the colleagues, is there any institutions working towards local data points? And maybe for an institution like our university, and maybe for the faculty, that could be something we could look maybe into for data control, so that when lecturers want to upload their content material or previous exam papers as student material for the students to use, it can be beyond just uploading it to Moodle or to SharePoint. Whereas through a local language model server. I'm not too technical knowledge, but I'm sure the technical guys would know how to set up your private LLM. For example, we as a faculty to use. Then instead of similar to what you explained, Andrew, similar to how anybody in the world can create an ChatGPT agent to a specific focus, it still uses the global knowledge base of billions of words and parameters. We can then localize it, control it to what we want in our server base.
Colleagues, then I think we can wrap up probably here. Okay. I was looking at the time. Like I said, I came in late, so I can't even contribute effectively to the conversation, of AI as it unfolded today. But I do want to, before I thank all of you and before we formally close, just to say to colleagues, just from listening to you now, I think there's a lot more conversation that need to happen. I really like the idea, and I hope, colleagues, that you've heard that we said, we need you to have conversations with our students as well. So those are part of our creative thinking, the thinking that comes into it. There are ways and means to have. So there's a lot more conversation about the useful use of the creative use of AI and the challenges that we have so that we don't miss the student essential learning. That critical thinking skills, which AI might not necessarily give within a specific discipline. But if students know, we can just go through this and we journey this together, I think that would be great. Now, I also just want to before we do that, for the colleagues here, from the sessions that we've had during the year, one of the things that we've picked up is that we need further hubs on conversation around certain topics. And we need to still strategize that, so that the discussion don't only happen around the table as such here, but that we have champions that drive those those ongoing conversations. We need to talk about that. We are going to all have a nice break in December. This is our last training session for the year. And then we strategize on how to use this kind of space and the conversations even further going beyond. And the conversation on AI would then be one on those. Okay, this is only the starting point for us. We know that this debate is an ongoing one. And, we are all also on different levels of how much we know and how much we have used and not used it. We are on different levels in terms of that. But then I want to use the opportunity, first of all, to say to you, Andrew, Simon, and Khanyiso, thank you so much for your time and for coming on board with us, and have this conversation with us and indulge our questions and our thoughts around this. And I know Carmen has been making this connection with you for a while. So we've been looking at having this conversation. And we're glad that we were able to have it and end this year off with that conversation. But it's not the end of the conversation. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the colleagues around the table for showing up and have this conversation. This is what our process of learning and teaching is about, and build it forward. And I know in the absence, I'm just once again going to say thanks to our digital team that always makes things possible for us. Thank you, Carmen, for running with it, having the idea, and basically doing just about everything to make this happen. Okay. I hope she comes back in January after the holiday. It would be quite a crisis if she doesn't come back. We know where you stay. But yeah, so thank you very, very much for that. And I think you've already shared some of the ideas. You are going to do your evaluations. You can put some of those ideas on there for us. But also, if you have other ideas of how to take this conversation forward, to optimize what we have, but also minimize the risk around the whole issue around AI. So students still walk in here and they have the kind of graduate attributes that we want them to have, Please to share that. drop an email. And then I would then also say to you, Andrew and team, the whole group of you, share with us. You've now had this conversation with health sciences, and you probably had it with some of us has been on the platforms with you. And if you go back and you sit and think about today's conversation, and you think about the context of health sciences, you come up with bright ideas because you know these spaces quite well. Share that with us, I thought about this. Maybe you guys should think about this as a strategy or as a way of going about, etc. But thank you very, very much. Okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks. I was trying to
Bye,
type. I obviously don't type fast enough, but thank you so much. Thank
Very
you,
welcome,
Khanyiso,
Carmen.
Simon. And
Sure.
we'll be in touch by email and arrange something.
Yeah, and it's Patricia that you're going to distribute, eh?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I miss my
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
It's a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Bye. Back to the department. Bye.